When did someone's joke go way too far? I was sitting in detention when I noticed my boy's hand moving up and down at lightning speed, and there's no paper on his desk. Just Louis, breathing like he just ran a marathon while sitting completely still. Here's the thing about Louis. We used to be cool. Then somewhere around 7th grade, he started making these jokes. Stop checking me out. Every time I'd walk past him in the hall, it was, I know you want me, in this fake voice. Couldn't even ask to borrow a pencil without him going, I knew you'd find an excuse to talk to me. That friend who's annoying but you've known forever, so you just deal with it. Last week we were both in detention together too. He kept calling it our detention date and making kissy faces when Stevens wasn't looking. I finally snapped and told him to shut up, said it loud enough that everyone heard. But the thing about Louis is he doesn't just get mad. He gets even. He looks up, right at me. Not a glance. Full eye contact, while his hand is still going full turbo under the desk. My brain just froze, like when your computer shows you that spinning wheel of death. I reach for my phone in my pocket. Maybe I can text my mom, get out of here before. Phone on my desk, now. Mr. Stevens has radar for phones, I swear. You know the rules. I walk up and put it on his desk. He locks it in his drawer. Great. No lifeline, no evidence, no nothing. Then I noticed Louis's chair. He's turned it toward me. And the angle. When he finishes, it's gonna... I had 2 minutes, maybe less. His face is getting red. I get up real quiet and start moving to the empty seat behind him. Where do you think you're going? Stevens doesn't even look up. Assigned seats only. Sir, I just need to... You need to apologize to Louis for disrupting his concentration and sit back down. Wait, what? I'm sorry? Go on. Apologize. I look at Louis. He's got this smirk now. That same smirk from when he'd make his stupid jokes, but his hand hasn't stopped moving. Sorry, Louis. His smirk gets bigger. It's cool, bro. His voice is all breathy and weird. Good. Now sit down. The walk back felt like death row. Lucia next to me notices what's happening. Her face goes from confused to horrified to buried in her textbook in like 0. 2 seconds. But not before I catch her looking at me with this expression that kills me. Like maybe Louis's jokes weren't really jokes after all. I grab paper and write the fastest note of my life. My handwriting looks like a drunk spider, but whatever. Louis is doing inappropriate things aimed at me. Please help now. I fold it and speed walk it to Stevens' desk. He reads it, balls it up, throws it in the trash. Sir, please. Back to your seat. Now. Louis is watching me walk back, still smirking, still going, maybe 30 seconds left. I try scooting my desk back. SLAM. Stevens hits his desk. Desks stay where they are. Move it back now. Everyone jumps. Lucia's passing notes now. Kids are noticing. The whole room knows what's happening except the one adult who's supposed to stop it. I turn my chair sideways. Louis adjusts his angle like he's got some kind of targeting system. Face forward. Last warning. He's about to... One more word, and it's Saturday detention. Lucia stands up. Mr. Stevens. Everyone eyes on your own work. You ever see something happen in slow motion? Like when someone drops their lunch tray? That was the next 10 seconds. I threw myself off my chair like I was dodging a dodgeball. Hit the ground just as Louis finished his little personal project. The room went dead silent except for the clock ticking and someone going, oh my gosh. After detention, I caught Stevens in the hallway. He literally almost on me. You saw my note. You have a sick imagination, kid. Lucia shows up like backup in a video game. We all saw it happen. Stevens looks at her like she just said the earth is flat. I saw a kid shifting in his seat. You're the ones making it weird. He turns back to me. Maybe stop staring at other boys if it bothers you so much. Fast forward a week later, and Louis followed me into the bathroom. Started doing it again, but he wasn't ready for my pocket snake. I got ready to throw it at him. Louis backs away and the door swings shut behind him, and I'm still standing there holding this stupid rubber snake. My hands start shaking so bad I almost drop it. The adrenaline catches up all at once and my legs turn to jelly, and I have to sit down right there on the gross bathroom floor because standing feels impossible. My brain keeps playing the same scene over and over like a broken video. Stevens reading my note, Stevens balling it up. Stevens throwing it in the trash like it was nothing. Like I was nothing. I don't know how long I sit there, but eventually my breathing slows down enough that I can think straight. I get up and my knees feel wobbly, and I walk to the sink and turn on the cold water. I splash my face over and over, trying to wash away the feeling of Louis staring at me. When I look up at the mirror, my face is pale and my eyes look too big for my head. I look like someone who just saw something they can't unsee. I can't stay in here forever, so I shove the snake back in my pocket and take a deep breath and head out to my locker. I keep my head down walking through the hallway because I don't want anyone to see my face and ask questions I can't answer. I'm almost to the parking lot when I hear footsteps catching up behind me, and I tense up thinking it's Louis, but it's Lucia. She doesn't say anything at first, just falls into step next to me, and we walk together in silence for maybe 20 feet. Then she asks real quiet if I'm okay, and I realize she's the only person in this whole school who actually saw what happened in detention and believed me. Everyone else either didn't notice or pretended not to, or thought it was funny. I tell her I'm fine, but my voice does this weird crack thing in the middle, and she just nods like she knows I'm lying but isn't going to push it. We get to the parking lot, and she gives me this look that's part sympathy, part anger, and heads to her car. I sit in mine for 10 minutes before I can make myself turn the key. That night at dinner, Mom's talking about something that happened at work, and I'm pushing food around my plate, not really eating. She keeps going on about her coworker drama, and normally I'd be half listening, but tonight I can't focus on anything except what happened. I keep thinking I should just tell her right now, just say it out loud. But how do I even start that conversation? Hey, Mom, a kid sexually harassed me in detention while a teacher watched and did nothing. The words stick in my throat every time I try to form them. Part of me is scared if I tell her she'll call the school and make everything 10 times worse. Louis will find out I told, and who knows what he'll do next. But another part of me desperately wants someone to fix this because I can't fix it myself, and Stevens proved adults don't care. Mom asks if I'm feeling okay, and I mumble something about being tired, and she buys it and goes back to her story. I excuse myself early and go to my room and close the door. I can't sleep. I lie there staring at my ceiling and my brain won't shut off. It keeps replaying Stevens reading my note, the way his eyes moved across the words, the way he balled it up without even hesitating, the way he threw it in the trash like it was a gum wrapper, and then his face when I confronted him after detention. That looked like I was the problem, like I was some kid with a sick imagination making up stories for attention. I remember his exact words. "You have a sick imagination, kid." Like what I saw wasn't real. Like Louis wasn't doing what he was clearly doing. Like I'm crazy. I roll over and check my phone. It's almost midnight. I open my texts and start typing to Lucia before I can talk myself out of it. "Do you remember exactly what you saw in detention?" I hit send and don't expect her to respond this late, but 3 dots appear immediately. She's awake too. Her response comes through in one long message describing everything. Louis's hand moving under the desk. The angle of his chair toward me. My note to Stevens. Stevens reading it and throwing it away. Me trying to move my desk. Stevens yelling at me to stay put. The whole room watching it happen. Having someone else confirm it all makes me feel less insane. At least I'm not the only one who saw what really happened. I decide right there at midnight that I have to report this tomorrow. Louis isn't going to stop, and Stevens already proved he won't help. If I do nothing, then Louis wins and this becomes my new normal, and I can't live like that. The thought of walking into school and explaining this whole thing to another adult makes me want to throw up. What if they don't believe me either? What if they think I'm making it up or overreacting or secretly wanted it? But doing nothing means Louis gets away with it and probably does it again. I set 3 alarms on my phone for tomorrow morning because I know I'm going to want to chicken out. I set them loud and annoying so I can't just hit snooze and roll over. I have to do this. I fall asleep sometime after 2. The next morning, all 3 alarms go off and I drag myself out of bed feeling like I didn't sleep at all. Walking into school feels like walking through a minefield. I'm scanning every hallway for Louis or Stevens. My stomach is doing flips and I'm sweating even though it's cold outside. I keep my hand in my pocket touching the rubber snake like it's some kind of lucky charm. First period passes in a blur. I don't hear anything the teacher says. At the break, I head straight for the counseling office before I can change my mind. The receptionist looks up when I walk in and asks what I need to see someone about. I freeze because there are other students sitting in the waiting area, and how do I say this out loud in front of them? I mumble something about a safety issue and she tells me to take a seat. The 15 minutes I wait feel like 15 hours. Every time the door opens, I jump thinking it's my turn, but it's other students going in and out. My leg won't stop bouncing. My palms are sweating. I keep rehearsing what I'm going to say in my head, but the words sound wrong every time. Finally, the counselor opens her door and calls my name. I follow her back to her office, and she closes the door and sits down across from me. She introduces herself and asks what's going on, and I have to force myself to start talking. I tell her about the detention incident first because that's the worst part. I describe Louis masturbating while staring at me. I describe writing the note to Stevens. I describe Stevens reading it and throwing it in the trash. My voice sounds shaky and weird, but I keep going. Her face stays professional, but I see her grip her pen tighter when I get to the part about Stevens dismissing my note. That small reaction tells me she's actually listening. She's not looking at me like I'm crazy or making things up. She's listening. She asks who else was there and saw what happened. I tell her about Lucia sitting right next to me and how she watched the whole thing go down. I mention the other kids in detention too because the whole room noticed by the end. She starts writing down names in her notebook, and I can hear her pen scratching across the paper. She asks me to walk her through exactly what Mr. Stevens did when I gave him the note. I describe how I wrote it as fast as I could and walked it to his desk and watched him read it. Then he crumpled it up and threw it in the trash without saying anything except to go back to my seat. When I tell her he said I had a sick imagination, she stops writing mid-word and looks up at me. Her expression is hard to read, but something shifts in her face. She sets down her pen and leans forward a little. She starts explaining something called Title IX in mandatory reporting. The words sexual harassment and hostile environment come out of her mouth, and suddenly this feels way more serious than just a school problem. It feels legal and official and real in a way that makes my stomach flip. She says she has to report this up the chain and that my parent or guardian needs to be notified today. My heart starts pounding because now this is really happening and there's no taking it back. She asks if it's okay to call my mom right now. I nod even though I'm scared of how mom will react to all this. The counselor picks up her phone and dials, and I sit there listening to one side of the conversation. She uses phrases like serious incident and needs to come in today, and I can tell she's being careful with her words. When she hangs up, she tells me mom will be here during lunch period. I have to go to second period and then third period knowing mom is on her way here. Between second and third period, I'm walking through the hallway and I see Louis. He's standing by his locker and he looks right at me. Not a quick glance, but full eye contact with this smirk on his face. Like he knows I can't do anything about what happened. He doesn't say a word, but he doesn't need to because the look says everything. My hands ball up into fists at my sides, but I keep walking. I'm not giving him an excuse to make me look like the one starting problems. I get to third period and can't focus on anything the teacher is saying because I keep thinking about mom coming to the school. Lunch period finally arrives and I head to the counseling office. Mom is already there sitting in the waiting area looking worried and confused. We go back to the counselor's office and sit down, and I have to explain everything again with mom right there next to me. It's even harder the second time because I can see her face going through all these emotions. First shock when I describe what Louis was doing in detention, then anger when I tell her about the note to Stevens, then something that looks like guilt maybe because she didn't know any of this was happening. The counselor mentions Lucia as a witness and says they'll need a statement from her too. Halfway through explaining everything, the assistant principal walks in. He's all business as he sits down and starts taking notes. He asks clarifying questions about timing and locations and who saw what. Then he starts talking about immediate safety measures they can put in place. Different bathroom passes so I don't have to go at the same time as Louis. Change seating in any classes we share. Adjusted schedules if needed. It sounds good when he's listing it all out, but I'm thinking about how Mr. Stevens was supposed to keep me safe too, and look how that worked out. The AP starts talking about no contact orders and how they can tell Louis to stay away from me. But then he admits they're limited in what they can actually enforce, especially in hallways and common areas. I can hear the gaps in what he's saying. Basically, Louis could still get to me if he really wanted to, and there's not much they could do to physically stop him. Mom picks up on it too because her jaw gets tight. She's not having any of these vague promises. She interrupts and demands everything be put in writing with specific timelines and consequences. When exactly will the seating change happen? What are the consequences if Louis violates the no-contact order? Who is monitoring the situation? The AP agrees to email a summary of the safety plan and next steps by end of day. Watching Mom advocate for me like this makes me feel less alone, even though part of me is embarrassed she has to fight this battle for me. The next morning, I'm at my locker when I hear Lucia got called to the counseling office. By lunch, she finds me in the cafeteria and sits down. She tells me she gave them a written statement describing everything she saw in detention. She specifically mentioned Mr. Stevens reading my note and throwing it in the trash. She mentioned him making me apologize to Louis. She mentioned seeing Louis's hand moving and the angle of his chair. I feel this wave of gratitude wash over me because she didn't have to stick her neck out like this. She could have stayed quiet and avoided getting involved, but she chose to back me up. By midday, the whispers have started spreading through school. But the story getting passed around is all twisted up. Some people are saying it was mutual, or that I'm making a big deal out of nothing. I'm walking past a group of kids near the vending machines, and I hear someone say, Louis was just joking around. I want to scream at them that what I saw wasn't a joke. The way rumors work in this school, I'm somehow becoming the problem instead of the victim. People are looking at me in the hallways like I'm the one who caused drama, like I should have just kept my mouth shut and dealt with it quietly. Fifth period comes and I walk into Stevens' classroom trying to act normal, but my whole body feels tight. He's at his desk doing something on his computer and doesn't look up when I come in, but I can feel the energy in the room shift. I take my seat and get my stuff out while other kids file in and the bell rings. Stevens stands up and starts talking about today's assignment, but then he stops mid-sentence and looks around the room. He says something about how important it is that we all maintain professionalism and not create unnecessary drama in the learning environment. His eyes don't land on me directly, but I know that comment is aimed right at me. A few students shift in their seats and glance my way, and the whole room feels uncomfortable. I keep my head down and focus on my notebook, but my face is burning hot. The rest of class drags on forever, and I can barely focus on anything he's teaching. Because I'm too busy being mad that he gets to stand up there acting like he's the victim of drama, instead of the adult who ignored a student asking for help. After school, I head to the counseling office because the counselor asked me to stop by. She's waiting for me with this spiral notebook and a printed packet of papers. She slides them across her desk and explains that I should start writing down everything that happens with Louis or Stevens. Times, places, what was said or done, who else was around to see it. She says it like it's simple, but the idea of having to document my own harassment feels heavy. She also hands me the packet, which has phone numbers for crisis hotlines and information about reporting procedures. She tells me this kind of record keeping really matters if things get worse, or if we end up needing to build a stronger case. Part of me feels more in control knowing I have a system now, but another part of me is scared that I need a system at all. Like this is going to be a long fight instead of something that just gets fixed quickly. The next day, I'm walking to my car after school, and I spot Louis across the parking lot near the gym entrance. He's with some of his friends, but he's looking in my direction. My first instinct is to pull out my phone and start recording in case he does something. But then I remember the school has this whole policy about recording other students without their permission. I could get in trouble for that even if I'm just trying to protect myself. I shove my phone back in my pocket, feeling trapped by rules that seem designed to protect the wrong people. Louis doesn't approach me, but he keeps staring and I have to walk past him to get to my car. I keep my head up and walk fast and nothing happens, but my heart is pounding the whole time. Everything about this situation feels rigged, like the system is set up to make it hard for me to gather proof while making it easy for him to keep messing with me. That night, I'm lying in bed scrolling through social media when I see Louis posted something. It's vague, just says, "Some people need to learn to take a joke," with a laughing emoji. He doesn't mention me by name, but everyone at the school knows what he's talking about. The comments start filling up fast with people defending him and making jokes about people being too sensitive. Some comments are obviously about me, even though nobody says my name. I feel sick reading through them, watching people I thought were decent turn this into a joke. I screenshot a few of the worst comments, but my hands are shaking. I go downstairs and show Mom, and her face goes from confused to angry in about 2 seconds. She grabs her laptop and starts taking screenshots of everything. The post, the comments, the timestamps. She opens her email right there at the kitchen table and starts typing. Mom's email to the assistant principal is direct and doesn't hold back. She writes that Louis is now harassing me online and asks exactly what the school plans to do about it. She copies the counselor and someone called the Title IX coordinator, who I guess handles this kind of stuff at the district level. She attaches all the screenshots with timestamps showing when everything was posted. I watch her type and feel grateful she knows how to work the system, because I wouldn't have thought to copy all those people or document everything so carefully. She hits send and we wait. Less than an hour later, the AP responds saying they're implementing interim measures immediately and will address the social media harassment first thing tomorrow morning. Mom reads the email out loud and I can hear the relief in her voice, but I'm still nervous about what interim measures actually means. The next morning, I get called to the office before first period even starts. The AP is waiting in his office, and he has me sit down. He explains they're changing my bathroom pass system, so I won't be going at the same times as Louis anymore. They're also moving my seat in the one class we share, which is Stevens' 5th period. The AP mentions that Stevens actually pushed back on the seating change, saying it would disrupt his classroom management. That tells me everything I need to know about whose side Stevens is on. But the AP says he overruled Stevens and the change is happening today regardless. I can tell there's going to be tension though, because Stevens isn't happy about being told what to do. The AP walks me through the new bathroom pass procedure, which involves checking in with the front office first so they can track where I am. It feels like a lot of rules, but at least someone is trying to keep me safe now. At lunch, the school resource officer pulls me aside near the cafeteria entrance. He's basically a cop who works at our school full-time. He asks if we can talk for a few minutes, and we go to an empty classroom. He explains the difference between school policy violations and actual criminal charges in a way that's honest, but not super encouraging. He says what Louis did in detention might not meet the legal threshold for criminal prosecution because of how the laws are written. But he also says it's definitely on their radar now, and they're watching the situation closely. It's not the answer I wanted because part of me hoped Louis would get arrested or something. But at least someone with actual authority is paying attention, instead of just brushing it off like Stevens did. The resource officer gives me his direct number and says to call him immediately if Louis does anything else. By the afternoon, I'm back in the counseling office, and the Title IX coordinator from the district office is there. She's this serious woman with a laptop and a legal pad covered in notes. The counselor explains that the coordinator has opened a formal complaint, which is bigger than just school discipline. There's going to be a whole investigation with interviews and formal findings and written reports. The coordinator explains the process step by step, and it sounds exhausting. They'll interview me again, interview Louis, interview witnesses, review any evidence, and then make official findings about whether harassment occurred. The process could take weeks. Part of me is tired just thinking about it, but another part feels hopeful because this sounds legitimate. Like maybe something will actually happen instead of just getting swept under the rug. During passing period before last class, Lucia catches up to me at my locker. She leans in close and tells me that 2 other kids from detention have been talking about giving statements to the Title IX coordinator. She thinks they're nervous about getting involved and dealing with the social fallout, but they saw everything that happened and feel bad about staying quiet. I tell her to let them know I'd really appreciate any support they can give. Having more witnesses makes my case stronger and makes it harder for people to say I'm making stuff up. Lucia promises she'll encourage them to come forward and reminds me she already gave her statement. I feel lucky to have her backing me up when a lot of other people are staying silent or actively making things worse. The next day, I hear through the grapevine that Stevens isn't being removed from his classroom. He's just being monitored, which apparently means someone checks in on his classes sometimes. The teachers' union has all these protections that make it really hard to take immediate action against teachers, even when they mess up badly. I'm so mad I can barely think straight because Stevens enabled everything that happened, and he gets to keep teaching like nothing is wrong. He's still standing in front of students every day with authority over them, while I'm the one who had to change my whole schedule and bathroom routine. The unfairness of it burns in my chest, but Mom reminds me that at least there's a formal investigation happening, and that might lead to bigger consequences later. I try to hold on to that, but right now it just feels like the adults who are supposed to protect students get protected instead. The next morning, I walk into school scanning every hallway corner and classroom door. Third period ends, and I'm moving through the crowd toward my locker when someone slams into my shoulder hard enough to spin me sideways. Louis keeps walking, but as he passes, he leans in close enough that I can smell his breath. "You can't prove anything," he whispers, and then he's gone into the crowd before I can even react. My heart is racing and my hands start shaking, but I force myself to pull out the notebook the counselor gave me. I write down the time from the hallway clock, the exact location near the science wing, and his exact words while they're still fresh. My handwriting looks messy because my hands won't stop trembling, but I get it all down. I'm getting better at this, turning fear into action instead of just freezing up. Fourth period, I have a scheduled meeting with the counselor, and she notices right away that something happened. I show her the notebook entry, and she nods slowly, adding it to her own records. Then she shifts gears and starts teaching me these breathing exercises that feel kind of silly at first. She has me breathe in for 4 counts, hold for 4, breathe out for 4. We practice it 5 times until my heart rate actually slows down. She teaches me grounding techniques too, like naming 5 things I can see, 4 things I can touch, 3 things I can hear. It sounds stupid, but when we practice it, I realize my brain stops spinning in circles. She explains how to recognize when I'm getting triggered, like when my chest gets tight or my thoughts start racing. We go through a specific exit plan for if I feel unsafe in class. I'm supposed to say I need to see the nurse, leave immediately, and go straight to her office or the AP's office. Having actual steps to follow makes me feel less trapped, like I have options now instead of just sitting there panicking. By the end of the session, I'm exhausted, but I also feel like maybe I can handle the next time something happens. After school, the AP calls Mom to schedule a bigger meeting for tomorrow with me, her, himself, and the counselor to formalize everything into an official safety plan. I'm anxious about sitting through another meeting where I have to relive the whole detention incident again and explain why I'm scared. That night at dinner, Mom sees me pushing food around my plate and asks what's wrong. I tell her about having to do another meeting, and she reaches across the table to squeeze my hand. She reminds me this is how we get things in writing, how we hold people accountable instead of just accepting vague promises. She's right, but it doesn't make me less tired of talking about it. The next day, the meeting happens in a conference room with a big table and the 4 of us sitting around it. The AP has printed out a safety plan template, and we go through it section by section. They create alternate route maps between my classes so I can avoid certain hallways where Louis might be. They set up a system where I can request a staff escort if I need one, no questions asked. They designate specific safe people I can go to in any building, including the counselor, the AP, and 2 other staff members I don't know well, but who've been briefed on the situation. It's way more concrete than the earlier meeting where everything felt vague and temporary. The AP prints out copies for everyone and I sign mine, which makes it feel official and real. When we leave, I actually feel like maybe the school is finally taking this seriously instead of just trying to make the problem go away quietly. But that feeling doesn't last long because at lunch the next day, I'm walking past a table in the cafeteria when someone makes a loud joke about detention dates. Half the table cracks up laughing and I freeze in place with my tray, feeling everyone's eyes on me. Then Lucia's voice cuts through the noise telling them they're idiots if they think sexual harassment is funny. A few people look ashamed and stare down at their food, but most just go quiet and uncomfortable. She doesn't stop there, asking them if they'd think it was funny if it happened to their sister or their girlfriend. The table goes completely silent, and I manage to keep walking to where Lucia is sitting. I sit down next to her and my hands are shaking again, but this time it's partly from gratitude that she's willing to make herself a target to defend me. 2 days later, I'm back in an office, this time with the Title IX coordinator from the district. She's got her laptop open and a legal pad covered in notes, and she interviews me for over an hour. She asks the same questions multiple different ways, making me describe what Louis did and what Stevens did over and over. I know she's checking to make sure my story stays consistent, but it's emotionally draining to keep reliving that detention room. By the time she's done, I'm exhausted and starting to doubt whether all this effort will actually lead to real consequences or if Louis will just get a slap on the wrist. She thanks me for my time and says she'll be interviewing other witnesses too, but her face doesn't give anything away about what she thinks. The next morning, the AP calls me to his office during second period and explains that Louis has been officially given a no-contact directive. He's not supposed to approach me, speak to me, or communicate about me on social media. The AP warns me that I need to report any violations immediately, even small ones. He hands me a copy of the directive with all the rules spelled out. It's something, having it in writing like this, but I know a piece of paper won't physically stop Lewis if he decides to ignore it. That afternoon, Steven sends an email to our whole class about treating each other with respect and maintaining a positive learning environment. It's so generic it could apply to anything, and clearly he's just trying to make himself look good. Mom sees it when I show her that night and she's furious. She hits reply all and writes that teachers need to remain neutral and not make students who report harassment feel targeted or singled out. Within an hour, several other parents have responded supporting what Mom said. It's a small victory watching adults actually back us up in writing where everyone can see it. Over the next few days, 2 additional students from that detention submit statements to the Title IX coordinator confirming they witnessed everything. One does it anonymously through the counselor because they're scared of the social fallout. The counselor tells me about it during one of our check-ins, and knowing there are now multiple witnesses on record makes me feel less alone. It's harder for people to say I'm making stuff up when there are other people saying they saw the same things. But Louis isn't done trying to mess with me. He switches tactics to something creepier and harder to report. He'll just stare at me in the hallway or cafeteria without saying anything or coming close. It's threatening and makes my skin crawl, but technically it doesn't violate the no-contact order since he's not approaching or speaking. I document every incident anyway, writing down the time and location each time I catch him staring. My notebook is filling up with entries, and I'm not sure if any of it will matter, but the counselor keeps telling me documentation is important. At least now I have tools to deal with the panic when it hits, and I have people who actually believe me and are trying to help. A few days later, I'm back in the counselor's office, asking if I can transfer out of the one class I still share with Louis. She pulls up my schedule on her computer and starts clicking through different options. After a couple minutes, she shakes her head and explains that moving me would mess up my graduation requirements because that class is only offered those 2 periods, and the other section conflicts with a required course. We talk through the options, and none of them work without putting me behind or making me take summer school. I ask if there's any way to make it work, and she keeps trying different combinations, but everything has some problem. It's so frustrating because I'm the one who has to choose between my mental health and staying on track to graduate when I didn't do anything wrong. She promises to keep looking for solutions and says she'll talk to the AP about other possibilities. The meeting ends without any real answer, and I walk out feeling stuck. 2 days later, the counselor catches me in the hallway before lunch with good news. They found a workaround by moving me to a different section that meets the same period in a different room. I'll start the new section tomorrow. It's such a relief knowing I'll have one less place where I might run into Louis. The new teacher doesn't know any of the backstory, which means I can just be a normal student in that class. After school that same day, I'm walking to my car in the parking lot when Louis appears from between 2 vehicles. He's not physically blocking my path, but he's standing close enough that I have to slow down. He starts talking about how I ruined everything over nothing, and how he was just messing around. His voice has this edge to it that makes my skin crawl. I'm looking around for teachers or other students when I spot Lucia walking to her car about 30 feet away. She sees what's happening, and without me saying anything, she pulls out her phone. Louis keeps talking about how unfair everything is and how I took a joke too far. Lucia has her phone up now, and I can tell she's recording audio. Louis notices her phone, and his expression changes. He backs off and walks away without another word. Lucia comes over and tells me she caught most of what he said on a voice memo. The next morning, we meet before first period and go straight to the AP's office. He's got coffee and looks tired, but he lets us in right away. Lucia plays the recording, and we watch his face get tighter as he listens to Louis's words. When it's done, he confirms this is a clear violation of the no-contact directive. He says there will be consequences and thanks us for bringing it to him immediately. For the first time, I feel like the documentation is actually working because we have proof Louis can't deny. That afternoon, during 5th period, an office aide comes in with a note, and Louis gets called down to the AP. He's gone for the rest of the period. By the time school ends, everyone's talking about how Louis got in-school suspension for violating some order. The rumor mill is already spinning it like he's the victim of unfair punishment. Some of his friends start posting online about how he's being persecuted and how the school is overreacting. I have to watch people defend him in the comments saying he didn't do anything that bad. The next day in Mr. Stevens' class, I notice he's acting different. The Title IX coordinator must have interviewed him because now he's short with everyone and won't make eye contact with me. He seems nervous and keeps checking his phone between teaching. The power has shifted a little bit because now he's the one being looked at. It doesn't fix what he did, but it's something to see him uncomfortable. Over the next week, I'm sleeping slightly better knowing there are actual consequences happening. I keep up with my documentation like the counselor taught me, writing down times and places whenever Louis stares at me or when I feel unsafe. The counselor also starts preparing me for the possibility of a formal hearing where I might have to testify. She walks me through what that process would look like and what kinds of questions they might ask. During a fire drill the following week, everyone has to crowd outside by the parking lot. In all the chaos, Louis ends up standing just a few feet away from me. I can see him looking at me and my chest gets tight. Breathing becomes harder and I feel dizzy. A teacher I don't know well notices I'm not okay and comes over to ask if I'm all right. I manage to signal that I need space from someone nearby. I remember the exit plan the counselor taught me, and I tell the teacher I need to step away for a minute. I walk over to where the designated safe staff member is standing near the building entrance. She sees my face and immediately gets what's happening. She positions herself between me and where Louis was standing, so I don't have to see him anymore. The fire drill ends after a few more minutes and everyone files back inside. I get back to class without any direct confrontation, and I'm shaky but also kind of proud that I used the plan like I was supposed to. That afternoon, Mom sits at the kitchen table with folders and papers spread everywhere. She's compiling a complete packet of everything for the Title IX coordinator, who requested all our documentation in one place. She's got my notebook with all the incident logs, screenshots of the social media posts about me, copies of witness statements from Lucia and the other students, the audio recording from the parking lot, and printed copies of every email between us and the school. Watching her organize it all makes the pattern impossible to ignore. There's proof of everything now, and it's all in writing. The next morning, the SRO pulls Lucia into his office to go over the parking lot recording. I find out later from her that he spent almost half an hour playing it back and asking her specific questions about what Louis said and how he said it. The SRO explained the difference between harassment and assault, between a school policy violation and an actual criminal threat. Lucia tells me he was really careful about it, like he wanted her to understand why some things cross into police territory and others stay with the school. She said it was kind of scary hearing him break down all the legal definitions because it made everything feel more serious. He told her the recording was solid evidence of Louis violating the no-contact order, but probably wouldn't rise to criminal charges on its own. Still, he said he was keeping it on file in case anything escalated. By third period that same day, I start noticing Louis's friends acting different toward Lucia. One of them walks past her locker and says something about snitches that I can't quite hear, but Lucia's face goes red. At lunch, someone posts a comment on social media saying she's making stuff up for attention, and 3 of Louis's friends like it within minutes. I catch up with Lucia after 5th period, and she looks tired, but her voice is steady when she tells me she's not backing down. She says what she saw was real, and she's not going to pretend it didn't happen just because people are being jerks about it. I feel awful that she's dealing with this because of me. She didn't ask to be in detention that day, and she didn't have to record anything in the parking lot. The next day at lunch, I make a decision. Instead of hiding in the library like I've been doing for the past week, I walk straight to Lucia's table in the cafeteria and sit down. A few people at nearby tables stare and I can feel my face getting hot, but I don't move. Lucia looks surprised for a second, then smiles and asks how my morning was like. This is totally normal. Most people go back to their food after a minute and ignore us. It's a small thing, but it feels important, like I'm showing everyone that I'm not ashamed, and Lucia shouldn't have to deal with this alone. That afternoon, during last period, an office aide delivers a note to my teacher, and the whole class goes quiet. The note isn't for me, though. It's a general announcement that Mr. Stevens has been placed on temporary leave, and a substitute will be taking over his classes starting tomorrow. By the time the final bell rings, everyone's talking about it. The rumors spread fast and get twisted. Some kids are saying Stevens got fired, others are saying he's sick, and a few are blaming me for getting a teacher in trouble. I hear someone in the hallway say I'm ruining people's lives over nothing, and I have to keep walking and pretend I didn't hear it. The weight of being the center of all this drama makes my chest feel tight. The next morning, Louis's friends decide to make their move. I'm walking to 2nd period when 3 of them position themselves in the hallway, so I have to walk past them. One of them says just loud enough for me to hear that some people make things up to get attention. Another one mutters something about ruining lives. I pull out my documentation notebook and write down the time, location, and what they said while I'm still standing there. My hands are shaking, but I keep writing. Then a teacher I don't even know steps out of her classroom and tells them to move along. They scatter immediately, and she gives me this look that says she knows what's going on. It hits me that word has spread among the staff to watch for this kind of stuff. That evening, Mom's phone buzzes during dinner, and she checks it immediately. The Title IX coordinator sent an email to both families scheduling a preliminary findings meeting for next week. Seeing those words in the subject line makes everything feel official and final. Mom prints out the email and adds it to our documentation folder. We spend the rest of the evening at the kitchen table going through everything again, making sure we haven't missed anything. Mom has tabs and labels on different sections, and she keeps asking me if I remember specific details about specific incidents. The next morning, I'm walking to 1st period when the AP calls me to the office over the intercom. My stomach drops because I have no idea what this is about. When I get there, he's got his computer pulled up showing hallway camera footage from earlier that morning. The timestamp shows it was right after I got to the school. The footage is clear and shows Louis deliberately walking toward me in a corridor when he could have easily taken the stairs on the other side of the building. The AP pauses the video and asks me to confirm that's Louis and that's me. I nod and he makes a note. He explains this is a clear violation of the distance directive from the no-contact order. I feel this surge of relief because there's proof that can't be argued with. The preliminary findings meeting happens 3 days later in a conference room at the district office. Mom and I sit on one side of the table, and the AP and Title IX coordinator sit on the other. Louis and his parents are in a different room. The coordinator has a thick folder in front of her, and she walks through everything methodically. She goes over witness statements from Lucia and the other students, my documentation logs, the parking lot audio recording, and the hallway camera footage. She explains each policy violation in detail and shows how the evidence supports each finding. When she's done, she says the finding is substantiated harassment with multiple violations of school policy and the no contact directive. She says sanctions will be implemented immediately and asks if we have any questions. Mom asks what specifically will happen to Louis, and the coordinator pulls out another document. Louis is getting an extended suspension starting tomorrow, with a requirement to complete counseling before he can return. When he does come back, his schedule will be completely separated from mine for the rest of the year. He's also getting a final warning that any further violations will result in expulsion. The safety plan is being renewed and strengthened with additional monitoring. It's not perfect, and I know a suspension isn't the same as him actually changing, but these are real consequences that will actually affect him. The coordinator then addresses what's happening with Mr. Stevens. She says he's being formally reassigned to a different school for the remainder of the year, and he's required to complete training on Title IX, mandatory reporting, and student safety. She notes that the investigation into his conduct is still ongoing. I wanted him fired completely, but at least he won't be in my building anymore, and there's now an official record of what he did wrong. Over the next week, I settle into something that almost feels normal again. The counselor pulls me out of class twice for check-ins where we sit in her office, and she asks how I'm doing with the hallway traffic and bathroom situations. I tell her the truth, which is that I'm still jumpy when I hear footsteps behind me, but it's getting better. She reminds me about the bathroom buddy system where I can text a staff member if I need an escort, and they'll send someone within 5 minutes. I haven't used it yet, but knowing it exists helps. Staff are definitely watching more now because I catch teachers positioning themselves in hallways during passing periods, and the SRO nods at me when I walk past the main office. It's not perfect, and sometimes I still get that tight feeling in my chest when I turn a corner, but I can actually breathe without feeling like something bad is about to happen. On Thursday, a kid named Alan, who sits behind me in math class, stays after everyone leaves and stands by my desk looking uncomfortable. He starts talking fast about how he spread some stuff around about me overreacting and making a big deal out of nothing, and he says he didn't really understand what actually happened until his older sister explained how serious it was. He tells me he feels bad about making things worse for me and he's sorry. Most people still give me weird looks in the cafeteria, and I know some kids probably still think I'm the problem, or that I got Louis in trouble over stupid jokes. But Alan actually looks me in the eye when he apologizes, and it feels real. I tell him it's okay, and he nods and leaves, and I sit there for a minute feeling like maybe not everyone thinks I'm crazy. 3 weeks after everything started, I'm back in the counselor's office for another regular check-in, and I realize something while she's asking her usual questions about how I'm feeling. I'm not scared walking through school anymore, not like I was before. I still watch for Louis, and I still take the long way to avoid certain hallways, but that panic feeling isn't there every second. I learned that writing everything down actually matters because the AP kept referencing my documentation logs during meetings. I learned that some adults will actually help if you push hard enough and bring proof, even though others like Stevens will ignore you. I learned I don't have to handle dangerous situations by myself, and that asking for help isn't weak. Louis still goes to this school, and I still see him sometimes in the distance, and some people still probably think I made everything into a bigger deal than it needed to be. But I have a safety plan that actually works with real people monitoring things. Consequences actually happen to both Louis and Stevens, even if they weren't as severe as I wanted. I know how to protect myself now, and I know who to go to if something happens again. It's not some perfect ending where everything is fixed and everyone apologizes and Louis transfers schools, but it's real, and I'm safer than I was 3 weeks ago, and right now that's enough. And that's today's takeaway. I like turning small stories into something you can actually use or think about. If this sparked an idea or a little reminder, that's a win. Subscribe so you'll catch the next one when it drops.